breaking down every game, every day in Major League Baseball. This is the Baseball Betting Show. Here is your host, Greg Peterson.
A warmer from the low. Welcome to lovely Las Vegas for the Baseball Betting Show with myself, Greg Peterson, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. We've got an excellent podcast for you as we're going to be joined in segment number 2 by one of our good friends, Curtis Rogers, who does such great work over at 710 Seattle Sports, taking a look at this great game of baseball that we all know and love. He does a pre- and post-game hosting for the Seattle Mariners, and we're going to be discussing with him what he's all seen here in the first 2 months of the season, what the outlook is out there in the AL West, what the outlook is overall in the American League, and then in the final segment, going to get you guys picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this Baseball Saturday as we touch them all. If you do have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you do have one of two ways we'll fire those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at @GUnit_81. Keep in mind, letters EM, they mean does not matter, so per usual, please do send these into the timeline. Other ways, find an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated. Then from there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review. While I did not get in any Twitter/X questions today, everything is powered by Edge Boost. Over at Edge Boost, they're making sure that bettors are able to have access to their funds whenever they need to, 24/7, 365 in leap years, 366 days out of the year, as they make sure that your account is set up to be able to approve all gambling transactions. If you go to edgeboost.bet, utilize the promo code GREG, G-R-E-G. That'll give you a dollar for dollar match on your first deposit up to $25. Now let's take a look back at everything that we saw in baseball on Friday. Tried to find some trends and try to get to know these teams a little bit better.
Games from yesterday is Greg buzzing about. Here is the rowdy recap.
Now, I will point out this was posted up a little bit in advance. I got tied up Friday night with a date night, so that means that I unfortunately don't have anything in terms of Padres versus Pirates, Nationals, D-backs, Twins, Mariners, and Yankees versus Dodgers. But that said, the day started off with the Cincinnati Reds being able to take it to the Chicago Cubs. This by a count of 6-2, a rare under for the Chicago Cubs, as they've actually been your best over team in all of baseball, with 61% of their games going over the total, 32 overs, 20 unders, and 5 pushes. But 6-2, the Cincinnati Reds, they were onto a nice win in this one, as for Cincinnati, Andrew Abbott, he allows 1 hit in 7 scoreless innings. Tony Santillan does give up 2 runs in a third of an inning, but Graham Ashcraft, scoreless inning, Emilio Pagan, pair of outs out of the bullpen, scoreless. And then for the Chicago Cubs, Colin Ray said, hip hip booed, giving up 6 runs in 5 2/3 innings, including 3 home runs. Tyler Stevenson, 4th home run season. TJ Friedel, 4th home run season. Jake Fraley, 4th home run of the campaign. The Milwaukee Brewers take it to the Philadelphia Phillies, this by a count of 6-2, as for the Brewers, they had the opener DL Hall do a nice job of lending 3 scoreless innings, and then Quinn Pricer gives up 2 runs over the course of 6 innings, including a home run to Nick Castellanos, 5th home run season. And for Taijuan Walker, he experienced a bit of regression here. 4 runs allowed in 4 innings. Carlos Hernandez give up a solo home run in 1 2/3 innings of work. Tanner Banks, he gives up a solo home run in his inning of work, as Christian Yelich went deep off of both of them. Home runs 11 and 12 of the campaign. You did have 2 1/3 innings scoreless out of Max Laser, but too little too late there. The Baltimore Orioles were able to hold down the Chicago White Sox, this by a count of 2-1. The White Sox fall, as for Chicago, just nothing doing at the plate in this one, as you did have Jared Schuster, the opener, give you a scoreless inning, and Sean Burke pretty solid, 6 punch-outs in 6 innings as the bulk guy, giving up 2 runs, and then you had a scoreless inning out of Dan Altavilla, but for the Baltimore Orioles, this was rock solid from Zach Eflin, pretty Eflin good, 7 scoreless innings. Felix Bautista does give up a run in the 9th inning, but gets the save, and Brian Baker, he was able to lend a scoreless inning. You had plenty of scoreless innings lent by Mets pitching, as they do get the job done, and they restore order by being able to cover a run line against the Colorado Rockies. 4-2 the final, as for Colorado, 9-48 this year. My gosh. I mean, good grief. And it's not even like Kyle Freeland was terrible. He gave up 3 runs over the course of 6 innings, pair of bombs, as you did have Starling Marte of the Marte Party get his 3rd home run of the season, then Francisco Lindor, home run number 11 of the season, and then he would go deep off of Seth Halverson, his 12th home run of the season. Halverson gives up that home run in his inning of work. Jimmy Erga a scoreless inning, but my goodness, the Rockies are just getting absolutely nothing going at the plate. You did have Sam Hilliard go deep for his 1st home run of the season. That comes off of Oscar Zobin, who gives up that home run in 1 1/3 innings. David Peterson, great name, great showing, as he goes for 5 2/3 innings, a long run. Reed Garrett a scoreless inning, and then Edwin Diaz is able to close things out in the 9th inning. I'm currently doing this as the Blue Jays are absolutely lambasting the Athletics, as I do this 11-5. As for Both the starting pitchers in this one, absolutely terrible. Jeffrey Springs gives up 6 runs in 2 innings, including a home run for Toronto. Going deep off of him was Mr. Ernie Clement, his third home run of the campaign. And then you have Grant Holman give up a home run to Edison Barger, third home run of the season. Mitch Spence came in for 2 2/3 innings. He gave up 2 runs. Holman gives up 2 runs in 2/3 of an inning. Justin Sterner gives up a run in a third of an inning from there. It's not like Chris Bassett had a massive performance either. Hook, line, and sinker he was taking here. 5 runs allowed over the course of 5 innings as Shea Langoliers, Shea Banks, his 10th home run of the season, and Tyler Soderstrom, 11th home run of the season. From there, he squirrel setting out Mason Flahardy and Uriel Rodriguez and company. They were able to close things out from there. Being able to close things out was the San Francisco Giants. They get a 2-0 win over the Miami Marlins. Cal Quantrill wasn't necessarily amazing, but he only gave up 2 runs over the course of 5 innings as the San Francisco Giants, 2 runs on 11 hits, as you also had Jansen Junk, a great name, be able to supply 4 scoreless innings as a combined 12 strikeouts between Quantrill and Junk. But for the Miami Marlins, they leave 10 men on base. They go 0 of 10 with men in scoring position as Kyle Harrison holds it down as he gives up 1 hit, 5 scoreless innings. From there, Tristan Beck, Ryan Walker combined for a scoreless inning. Eric Miller, Taylor Rogers, they combined for a scoreless inning. Spencer Bivens, pair of outs out of the bullpen scoreless, and then Camilo Duvall, a 4-out save to be able to get that one to the window. Also being able to get to the window, how about the Boston Red Sox as they're able to get the job done against the Atlanta Braves? As for Boston, it was a very nice start here from Lucas Giolito. He only goes 4 2/3 innings, but allows 1 run. From there, Jacob Wilson, Garrett Whitlock combined for 2 scoreless innings. Brandon Bernardino, he gets it out of the bullpen. Greg Weiser, 8 scoreless innings. And Trevor Story hits a home run off of Grant Holmes. His 7th home run season for Holmes, gives up 3 runs over the course of 5 2/3 innings. Allende Dos Santos gets it out of the bullpen. Dylan Lee, Pierce Johnson from there, they hold down the fort. And for the Atlanta Braves, through their first 8 innings in this game, they leave 9 men on base and they go 1 of 10 with men in scoring position. So not so savory there. I'm doing this as this game is still raging on, but looks like the Rangers should be able to get there against the St. Louis Cardinals as I am doing this. They have the bases loaded in the bottom of the 6th inning, and they're currently up by a count of 7-0. By the way, for the Texas Rangers, they played out of their first 30 home games, just 6 of them to the over. By far your best under team in all of baseball thus far this season. We'll see when it's all said and done if they are able to get another under, but 17 overs, 39 unders, and a push entering into the day on Friday as Matthew Liberatore, he gets lit ablaze, 5 runs, 4 of which were earned. He does give up a home run to Wyatt Langford, 11th home run season, and as I'm doing this, you're currently having Gordon Gassefo giving it up, so that's not necessarily so tremendous there. For the LA Angels, they do find a way to be able to get the job done against the Cleveland Guardians. As for the Angels, you had Jose Soriano give you a really good start. 6 scoreless innings. Robert Stevenson from there, he only throws 3 pitches. He has to leave this game early, but Reed Detmers, Ryan Zephyrion, they both give you a scoreless inning. Kenley Jansen closes things out in the 9th inning, and for Cleveland, you had just 1 run allowed by Luis Ortiz over the course of 6 innings, so tough luck loser there. Matthew Festa, pair of outs out of the bullpen, but allows a run. Tim Aaron, he gives up a run in a third of an inning. Jacob Junis, scoreless inning. Andrew Walters does give up a solo run. It is a third of an inning of work as Orde Soler gets his 8th home run season. Then you did have a pair of outs from Cade Smith out of the bullpen scoreless. This is also a game that is raging on as I do this, as you've currently got the Tigers and the Kansas City Royals doing battle. Currently that's 5-3. So this game at the very minimum is going to be a push on the total, if not an over, as Casey Mize only lasts 3 1/3 innings. Gives up 3 runs, including a home run. Going deep for Kansas City, Bobby Witt Jr., 6th home run season, and Seth Lugo was not long for this game either. He gives up 4 runs in 3 1/3 innings, including a pair of bombs, as you had Riley Green get his 13th home run season, Dylan Dingler his 5th. Brian Herter from there, 5 outs out of the bullpen scoreless for the Detroit Tigers. We'll see if they're going to be able to hold it down from here. And for the Kansas City Royals, Daniel Lynch, 1 1/3 innings, allows a run. Jonathan Bolin, he was able to go 1 1/3 innings scoreless as well, so he was able to get the job done. And also being able to get the job done is the pitching in terms of both the Rays and the Astros. I'm currently doing this as it's 1-1 in the 9th inning. Looks like this game is probably going to be going to extra innings, as for Ryan Pepio, 6 2/3 innings scoreless. From there, Kevin Kelly does give up a run in 1 that third inning scoreless, as you did have also on the flip side Mr. Calabreo get a second home run of the season, as Jose Calabreo, he was able to go deep off of Framber Valdez, who goes and pitches a complete 9 innings for the Houston Astros. He allows just 1 run along the way, 9 punch-outs, so he certainly was able to do his part, but that was a little bit harebrained and crazy to say the least. And if you're looking trend-wise at what we're getting in Major League Baseball right now, has been a lot of unders thus far this season with quite a few games pending for Friday. It still has been, over the last 7 days, quite a bit underwhelming. 43 unders to 35 overs. Meanwhile, the money line favorites, they've been solid, 48 and 34 on the money line. Again, we still have quite a few results pending for Friday, but that said, overall for the season, favorites are in at 58.4%, 488 and 348 on the money line. Meanwhile, the unders, they get 53.4%, 430 unders to 375 overs. So that's what we're seeing in baseball right now. That's what we all got on Friday. Coming up next, how about if we talk some Seattle Mariners baseball, about the AL West, the American League landscape in general, and so much more with our good friend in Curtis Rogers right here on the Baseball Betting Show. It's myself, Greg Peterson, now a part of the VSiN Family Podcast.
Breaking down every game, every day in Major League Baseball. This is the Baseball Betting Show. Here is your host, Greg Peterson.
And we're back here in lovely Las Vegas for the Baseball Betting Show with myself, Greg Peterson, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast, and it's always great to be joined by this man, as we've got Curtis Rogers aboard. He does an amazing job over at 710 Seattle Sports, taking a look at this great game that we all know and love of baseball, as he is the Seattle Mariners pre- and post-game host. On top of that, he's covering all things out there in the Pacific Northwest, whether it's the Seattle Kraken, whether it's the Washington Huskies, whether it is what we're seeing on the college basketball front, as we saw those NBA draft decisions come through over the last few days. You name it, he does it. You're able to follow him on Instagram and the old Twitter/X at A Kid From Kent all together. And Curtis, it's great to get you aboard. Thank you.
Greg, always happy to hop on with you, talk some baseball, especially this time of year as we're entering June. It's summertime. This is it right here. And a lot of teams jockeying for position in the final stretch before the trade deadline. You know, we're about a month and a half, 2 months away from that. So lots and lots of big decisions to be made, lots and lots of big games to be played here. Everybody's looking to kind of make their way through the standings right now. And the good thing is there's a lot of teams that have a shot at getting to the postseason. So hopefully this next few weeks here are going to be a bit crazy as we kind of figure out who's real and who's not.
Oh, it's going to be wild. It's going to be crazy. It's going to be a lot of good, clean family fun. And how do we take a look at the Seattle Mariners right now? Your main team, who currently they're atop the AL West, had a few struggles against the Washington Nationals over the last few days. But you know what? It's a Mariners team that I think it's so intriguing, the fact that they've actually been a little bit better on the road rather than at home this season. And it's also been very fascinating to see what the offense has been able to do.
It has, and for the most part, the offenses look good. They've cooled off a little bit here in the month of May, not putting up the same number of runs that they did to close out the month of April, but they're still atop the American League West. Things got a little bit tighter based off of that series loss they had to the Houston Astros in Houston last week, losing 3 of 4 to them, which tightened things up dramatically in that race atop the AL West. But I like the Mariners and what they've done over the season's first 50-plus games here. The big thing with them is getting this rotation back healthy. Saturday, you're going to see Bryce Miller make his return from the injured list. Logan Gilbert made a rehab start on Thursday of this week in AAA, and George Kirby has recently returned the rotation. Has not had the kind of results I think a lot of people have come to expect from George Kirby over his first 2 starts of the season, but you got to kind of take into account that he didn't really have a spring training this year, so this is kind of an extension of that for him, so maybe he's getting his sea legs underneath him, but you're getting this rotation back healthy, so hopefully that spells good things to come for this Mariners team, as that has been the biggest strength of their entire organization over the last, about 3 to 4 years, is just that starting rotation. It's coming more into picture right now, but as we know, it is so hard to predict injuries, and you don't really know what you got with these guys in terms of health. Emerson Hancock and Logan Evans have filled in pretty admirably in the absence of all 3 of those guys. But at the end of the day, you want Kirby, you want Gilbert, you want Bryce Miller in your rotation more often than not. And I think the Mariners banking on that in order to maybe put a little bit more cushion between themselves and Houston.
And I am so glad that you mentioned George Kirby at the back half of that, because, man, the first 2 starts have not been great for him. And You know this with being the Mariners pre and post game host. He didn't even look sharp at AAA Tacoma. Now, PCL, Juice Ball League, your ERA is going to be very high when you pitch out there in the PCL. But how big of a concern is it that George Kirby has looked the way that he has in his first few starts? Because this is not the George Kirby that we all know and love. It's as if someone abducted George Kirby, replaced him with some schlub, and said, "This is George Kirby," and is trying to sell that to us.
I would say 2 starts, you definitely sit up and pay attention because of what he has been in his career, and he's just been hyper efficient, one of the best strike throwers in all of baseball.
Had a multi-walk
like
game,
this,
too. Yeah.
Right, exactly. And George Kirby will be the first to tell you he hates walks. He hates walks more than just about anything on this earth. And so to see him kind of struggle with command a little bit, I would say the start against the Nationals was probably a little bit more concerning than the start against the Astros. I mean, the Astros, even though they're not what Houston has been over the last decade or so, they're still got some talent in that lineup. Whereas the Nationals, I mean, outside of James Wood, they don't have a whole lot going for themselves offensively. So that was a bit of a concern. We'll see how he goes this weekend against the Minnesota Twins, scheduled to start, I believe, Sunday for this Mariners team. So we'll get another look at him coming up here in the next day or so. But it is a concern for sure because you've got a lot riding on him and a lot riding on this rotation. And if he's not going to be his sharp self, that is obviously going to be a big concern. Now, do the Mariners go out and maybe acquire a starting pitcher? I don't think anybody would be opposed to the idea right now here in Seattle. But again, if you go out and try to acquire somebody right now, you're leaving yourself a little more vulnerable come the trade deadline because you don't have as many assets to move the closer you get to the deadline. But, you know, could the rotation health maybe become such a need where you do have to make a move early on? The problem is there isn't a lot of help available right now in terms of starting pitching help. I mean, you look at the White Sox, you look at the Marlins, you look at the Rockies. Those are the 3 teams you go to right now, and they don't have it, at least not in spades. Whereas, you know, a team that obviously had high expectations coming into the year was the Orioles. Starting pitching has been their biggest issue this year. Maybe Zach Eflin is a guy that makes his way to the trade market. But other than that, I mean, Charlie Morton has been horrible this season. He's got an ERA over 7. He looks cooked. There just isn't a lot of starting pitching help right now. Maybe the playoff picture, or at least the post-All-Star game playoff picture, should come into picture here a little bit more clear so that these teams can kind of figure out who it is that is available and who it is they want to be making moves for. But who would have thought at the start of the year that starting pitching would be a need for the Mariners as we approach June?
Yeah, that is quite stunning. The injuries have certainly mounted for this team. Logan Gilbert, we're going to see when he's going to be able to get it back out there on the mound. And you thought when George Kirby came off the injured list that things were going to be sorted out there, but they've had to rely a lot on the bullpen as well. And how big is that in an AL West where, let's call it what it is. We've got some of the worst bullpens in all of baseball out there in the AL West. I'm looking at you, the LA Angels. I'm also looking at you, the Athletics. The Texas Rangers have been a little bit shaky, but you know what? It's neither here nor there. And obviously the Astros have been very good in their bullpen as well. But for Seattle, I feel like the bullpen pitching has actually been quite good for them, considering what the starting pitching has been.
Well, yeah, a big help in that is Andres Munoz at the back end of the game, still with an ERA of 0.00. We're 2 months into the season. Has not allowed an earned run yet. They've got Matt Brash back, which is good. I think one thing right now that is hurting the bullpen pitching in the AL West is really kind of a lack of dominant starting pitching outside of maybe, you know, a few guys here or there. It's not really something that all 5 teams have in common right now. And when your starting pitching is not going deeper in games, it leaves your bullpen more exposed, having to cover more games, more innings in games, I should say, more often than not. You know, you want your starting pitcher going 6 innings. You want your starting pitcher going 7 innings because then you're only having to rely on maybe 3, possibly 4 arms in a game beyond your starting pitcher. Whereas if your guy's going 4 innings, your guy's going 5 innings, you're going to need probably 4 or 5 guys to finish off a game, and that leaves your bullpen taxed. It leaves your bullpen tired the next night out. You know, who's available, who's not. It's always just a guessing game. Great starting pitching is the biggest benefit to a bullpen, and a great offense as well, because you're not relying upon your bullpen to save you time and time again. You know, I think starting pitching across Major League Baseball is obviously not what it used to be. And that has had an adverse effect, I think, on bullpen success, especially guys who are kind of in those middle roles, maybe not your eighth and ninth inning guys, but definitely the guys that you bring in the sixth and seventh innings, you're having to rely on them more and more and more and more. When do you really want your sixth inning guy, your seventh inning guy to lead your team in relief appearances? Probably not. You usually want your setup guy or your closer, or maybe not your closer, but the guy who you use in your highest leverage situations. You kind of want them to be your most used relievers. So you just want your starting pitching to go deep. Right now, that just has not been the case for a lot of teams, specifically teams here in the AL West.
Yep, it certainly has not been, and it is such an interesting AL West race because the Texas Rangers have actually been surprisingly good with their pitching, but I don't know where in the heck this offense has went. It has been beyond bad for them. The Angels seem to only be able to hit home runs. The Athletics, it feels like it comes and goes with them. They've just been a random team that is on an almighty funk. And for the Houston Astros, they're starting to rise up, and they're giving chase to the Seattle Mariners as we record this podcast for first place in the AL West, but it doesn't feel like they've hit peak form of themselves either.
Yeah, it is so hard to figure out who anybody is in the American League West. And the Mariners have at least been the most consistent of the teams in the AL West. But again, as we've talked about, they've got their own issues as well. So is there any team that you'd be willing to go both hands in on out of these five, after Memorial Day? I don't feel super confident in any of them to be able to make it all the way through 162. It does kind of feel, though, maybe that Seattle and Houston are putting a little bit of distance between themselves and the rest of the division. Again, Texas has a lot of talent on their roster, especially offensively, so you can't ever count them out. But I just don't see it from the Angels. I don't see it from the A's right now. I think it's going to be the Mariners. I think it's going to be the Astros. I think those are the two teams that are going to be fighting this thing out. And I think it's going to be a lot different than last year. I don't think it's going to be one team getting off to a big lead and the other one hunting them down. I think it's going to be both these teams, being in first place for a few days here or there. The other team is in first place a few days here or there. I think these two teams are going to be neck and neck for quite a while here, unless one team goes out and makes a pretty game-changing move.
Yep, I think that it's going to be a very fun race out west, but as we both know, the American League just not as strong as the National League as well. And how do you take a look at this American League picture where it feels like it's the New York Yankees, and then the AL Central just seems to have a lot of solid teams that have their warts, but at the same time are putting wins up on the board?
Yeah, and the AL Central this year, I don't think it's necessarily been a case of everybody feasting on the White Sox as it's been over the last few years. Yes, the White Sox are 20 games below 500 right now, but it's really been just kind of everybody beating up on everybody. You've got four teams above 500 right now in the American League Central. You look at the Royals sitting at 30-27. They would be a game and a half out in the American League West right now. They'd be in second place in the AL East. So the AL Central has been very competitive, and it's been, over the last couple of years, one of the biggest surprises in all of baseball, just how competitive the American League Central has been. You look at the American League West, I don't know if I would take any of those teams over the top four right now in the AL Central. And heck, I mean, you want to talk about how competitive this thing is. The Minnesota Twins, they went on that 13-game winning streak. They went from fourth place in the standings to about fourth place in the standings in the AL Central. They went 13 in a row. They're basically right where they were at the very start of that streak, even though they're, definitely much more in the fray at the end of May. But this AL Central, you can go on a run, but you're not going to be able to shake the teams around you. And heck, I mean, even the Tigers sitting at 37-20, I kind of wonder too, they've got great starting pitching. That offense is one that I'm kind of wondering, especially getting a performance like they have out of Javi Baez, who has been one of the worst hitters in all of baseball over the last about half decade now. Maybe he's somebody that has figured out something, has flipped a switch. He's hitting kind of league average right now, which is a huge boost for that Tigers team. Gleyber Torres is hitting really well. So maybe this Tigers offense can continue on this pace that they've got going here. I know they've got the best record in baseball really since last year's trade deadline. I think there's 67-33, something ridiculous like that. So maybe I'm the crazy one, not totally buying into the Tigers. especially considering the string of wins that they've put together over the last 100 or so ball games.
Yeah, for the Detroit Tigers, it's been incredible what we've seen out of them. And I think the big difference for me this year on the Tigers rather than last year is that they just have more offense this year. Because last year they were going with bullpen madness. They did a nice job mixing, matching with all those guys down there in the bullpen. But now they've been able to get a little bit more starting pitching. And I think that offense coming into life is why I'm starting to believe in them more and more.
Yeah, I think the offense is one where you're kind of wondering if this is real. And yeah, Detroit is one team that Spencer Torkelson, number 1 overall pick, he had not lived up to expectations. Riley Green had been an all-star last year. He's looking really good again. So I like the contributions they've been getting. Kerry Carpenter has always been a really solid hitter. They just are a team right now that I think it's because maybe the lack of household names outside of Tarek Skubal on that team. Maybe that's why a lot of people are still kind of like, well, let's see what this Tigers team can do. Let's see what they can really do here. But, best record in the American League right now, it is a down American League. So you don't really know who is going to be the team you're going to buy in the most on. I think a lot of people kind of, at the end of the day, would probably put the Yankees as the team that is the easiest to buy into as a American League pennant winner right now. But they're definitely going to get their fair share of shots, and I think a lot of teams in the American League East as well. If Boston ever figures it out, I think they're going to be dangerous. The problem is that they're running out of time to figure it out. It's going to speed up on them really quickly here. Same goes for Toronto. They're a team that, if they figure it out, maybe it gets dangerous for the Yankees in that regard. But right now, the American League, it is really hard to feel comfortable about anybody's chances as we enter the season's midpoint.
Oh, no question about it. It's going to be a very interesting race out there, and it's going to be very interesting to see what we get on that from moving forward. As Curtis Rogers, who does such great work over at 710 Seattle Sports, joining me on the Baseball Betting Show. And Curtis, I have to ask you about this, because now we have gotten past Memorial Day. Now it's the sort of landmarker point where we know what's for real and what's for fake. What has been your biggest takeaway from this season? It could be a team, it could be something that you're seeing league-wide, but what has really been your takeaway from the first 2 months of the season?
Boy, biggest takeaway from the season right now, I would have to say shout out to these teams that actually, went out and made some splashes this last offseason. A lot of them are seeing the rewards of that. I look at the Cubs and their trade of Kyle Tucker. That's been huge for them. The Giants been able to stay in the hunt in the National League West. They signed Willy Adames. I think there's something to be said for these teams that went out and made great moves. Max Fried has been possibly the American League Cy Young favorite here through the season's first couple of months, especially, how much they have needed that in the absence of Garrett Cole. So shout out to these teams going out and making moves. Heck, I know Juan Soto has been a bit disappointing considering, the contract that he signed and the expectations for him. But, his numbers have been solid, maybe not spectacular, but they've definitely been solid for the Mets. So good to see teams get rewarded for busy off seasons, and good to see teams be able to put together seasons where expectations are high and them living up to it. And, reverse shout out to teams like Pittsburgh, who are just, they've got one of the most talented young players on their team and didn't do anything. Reverse shout out to the Colorado Rockies, who unbelievably are going to threaten the Cleveland Spiders of 1899 for worst record in Major League history. It feels like that is a very real possibility, which is insane to think about. You hate to see that one of the worst teams ever is one of the biggest storylines in baseball, but that's just kind of how bad the Rockies have been. And that's a franchise, Greg. You and I have been doing, this podcast for years now, and I don't think we've ever talked about them in any positive light. And I don't think there's any time in the future that they'll ever be talked about in a positive light. So, yeah, those are just some of the big takeaways I have of baseball here as we're past the 2-month marker.
Yep, absolutely. My goodness, it's Colorado Rockies team. And if you want to air out anything more on the Colorado Rockies, you let me know. But the joke that I've been making is that they're off to the worst start since not only the Ottoman Empire existed, but the Ottoman Empire was 25 years away from collapse. And I've just never seen, forget baseball, but in professional sports, a team just so sad, so pathetic, and so uncompetitive.
It's brutal to watch. I actually have a colleague up here who He hosts the Locked On Rockies podcast. His name's Paul Holden, and I see him every single day. And I just kind of look at him and I'm like, buddy, like, what is going on? Like, how do you do this? How do you manage to remain excited about this team every single day? And I mean, he shakes his head. He's like, I don't know how I do it. I really don't know how I do it. That's true passion. I respect people like that who definitely put in the time and the effort, even when things are so bad, because there's just nothing going right for that organization. And, credit to guys like Nolan Arenado getting out when you know nothing good is coming down the pipe. I still don't understand why Chris Bryant wanted to sign there. I get the money aspect of it, but boy, there was just nothing in the cards for that Rockies organization when he signed, and it turned out to be one of the worst free agent signings ever in baseball history. It's a mess there, and it's not going to get any better until the Monfort family sells. But I don't see that ever happening, and I don't see the Rockies ever being relevant in baseball until that happens.
Yeah, I mean, man. The fact that they have been outscored by darn near as many runs as the Mets have given up runs thus far this season says it all. And what says it all on this podcast is that we always have the best guests. And Curtis, you're one of the best in the business, my friend. You do such great work over at Seattle Sports 710. You do a great job with the Seattle Mariners pre- and post-game hosting, and so much more so. Love the good people at home know it's all on tap for you and how people can follow along on social media and other platforms.
Yeah, we've got a new edition of Extra Innings coming out on Monday as those aforementioned Baltimore Orioles who are off to a horrible start. They come to town here in Seattle. Yeah, so we'll dive into maybe what they have available at the trade deadline if teams are in the market, but also doing pre and post this weekend, obviously, and seattlesports.com. That's the place to be where you can find all that. Download Extra Innings, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify. Add a kid from Ken on Twitter and Instagram. And Greg, always happy to hop on with you, talk some ball this time of year, and can't wait till we do it again.
Absolutely. Curtis, just such an amazing pre- and post-game host over at 710 Seattle Sports. He does an incredible job taking a look at this great game of baseball, and every single time he joins me, lends amazing insight. So big thanks, Curtis, for joining me on the Baseball Betting Show, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. Coming up next, it is that time of the podcast. They give you picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this Baseball Saturday as we touch them all.
Breaking down every game, every day in Major League Baseball. This is the Baseball Betting Show. Here is your host, Greg Peterson.
And we're back here in lovely Las Vegas for the Baseball Betting Show with myself, Greg Peterson, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. It is always a pleasure to get Curtis Rogers aboard. He does such great work over at 710 Seattle Sports, taking a look at this great game of baseball that we all know and love. Every single time he joins me, he lends such amazing insights, and did so once again today. So big thanks to Curtis for joining me in the last segment. Now it is that time of the podcast. I give you picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this Baseball Saturday as we touch them all.
If a game is listed on the betting board, Greg has a side and a total on it, so it is time to touch them all.
Do note that as per usual, any changes that are made to these plays will be listed up on my Twitter/X feed at @GUnit_81. We are going to be going in the Las Vegas rotation order. This is where we go with the National League games first, then the American League games, any Interleague games. Those are going to be at the bottom. That'll keep things all nice, neat, clean, and easy. Let's start things off with a game that is primarily off the board. This is 9:51, 9:52, the Cincinnati Reds. And yes, we are on to Cincinnati. They're under the road. They're facing off against the Chicago Cubs. Now, we do know that we are going to be getting Nick Lodolo on the bump for the Cincinnati Reds. Right now, it's old TBD on the bump for the Cubs. Now, it's expected to be Ben Brown, and I'm seeing an opener at FanDuel with a total of 7.5, over is -105, under is -115, with the Cubs -164 on the money line, plus 138 is that number on the Cincinnati Reds. And I set my money line at a -166 on the Cubs. I was willing to go to a plus 120 or higher. That'd be my buy point on that Cubs run line, and right now I'm seeing that at a plus 128, so just on this initial opener that I'm seeing, I will be firing in on that Cubs run line. Now, a little bit of a side note is that we are going to be getting an opener for Ben Brown. That it's going to be Drew Pomeranz. That was found out after I did the breakdown. Really no change in handicap here, but Pomeranz has been pretty rock solid out of the bullpen, so do want to throw that in here. For Ben Brown, he has been a little bit all over the place. He certainly has been getting a lot of strikeouts, as he's right around about 10.5 to 11 strikeouts per 9 innings. The walks have been the biggest issue for him. He is giving up north of 4 walks per 9 innings, so he needs to tame that down. 6.39 ERA is all over the place, but he's only giving up about 1 home run per 9 innings. He's been a little bit unlucky on the strand rate. Last 2 starts, he gave up a combined 14 runs, and I think he's going to be able to hone in here, and he's going to be helped out by the fact that the wind is going to be blowing in on Saturday. looks like it's going to be blowing in at around about 10 or so miles per hour, give or take, just completely in, not directional or anything like that. So that'll be able to help out these pitchers. And for Nick Lodolo, he is getting a career low in strikeouts with less than 8 strikeouts per 9 innings, but still has been very effective this year. His walk rate is way down. He's only giving up 1.7 walks per 9 innings, 339 ERA, 367 fielding dependent. Now has given up at least 3 runs in 3 out of his last 5 starts, including 3 runs in 5 innings at home against the Cubs a few days ago. But I do think that for the Chicago Cubs, you just have too much firepower to deny this team. They're right now leading the league in terms of runs per game, with having a quartet of different guys that have given you at least 11 home runs thus far this season. Dansby Swanson, Pete Crow Armstrong, Kyle Tucker, Seiya Suzuki, with Tucker and Crow Armstrong both hitting about a 275. Seiya Suzuki's all of a sudden up to about a 270, and then these are not solo shots because you've got a lot of guys moving line, getting on base. Carson Kelly, 9 home runs and 111 at-bats with a 400 on base. Michael Busch is providing a 350 on base. Ian Happ, a 345 on base. Nico Horner sitting right around about a 285. So these guys have all been rock solid. Now the Cubs do need a little bit of help in terms of the bullpen. They've been able to have Daniel Palencia along Drew Pomeranz be able to step up a little bit more, but this is still a bullpen that's been a little bit hit or miss throughout the season. 15th in the league in terms of bullpen ERA, but all of a sudden for the Cincinnati Reds, their bullpen has been going a little bit sideways as well. Meanwhile, for the Cubs, even though they did have to use up Chris Flexen yesterday, they've been able to do a nice job of just holding down the fourth. They've got all their main pieces that should be out there in this one, including a guy that I really like that has stepped up for them in Mr. Caleb Theobar, has been able to give you a sub-3 ERA. But on the flip side, for the Cincinnati Reds, you've had a hit-or-miss lineup that does rank at the top 8 in the big leagues in terms of runs per game away from home, but much of that was due to the 24 spot that they put up against the Baltimore Orioles about a month or so ago against Charlie Morton. Now, if you're looking at that bullpen, you do have a few guys that have been pretty rock solid. As you got Taylor Rogers, Lyon Richardson, Tony Santillan providing a sub-350 ERA, but Graham Ashcraft, the long guy, is starting to have a little bit of issue. Louis May has not necessarily been so tremendous either, and for the Reds, it just feels like it's a very hit-or-miss offense. Ellie De La Cruz, 11 bombs. He's giving you about a 330 on base, but you've had a few guys that just have not been able to move the line for the team. Drake Fraley, when he's been out there, as he's been a bit banged up, along with Matt McClain, both hitting at 210 or lower. McClain is giving you 6 home runs, but really not moving the line. TJ Friedel has been very good, along with Gavin Lux, both give you north of a 380 on base. Not a lot of power out of these two guys, so Will Benson, in his small sample size, has been able to give you about a 275 average, 5 home runs, so that's been nice to see. And Austin Desai's kid, when he's out there, has been pretty solid, but he's dealt with injuries all throughout the season as well. So very interesting circumstance. I do think that for Lodolo, he experiences a little bit of regression here. I did sell my total 7.7, so if we get the 7.5, looking at the overhand, we'll be looking at that Cubs run line. 953, 954 on the betting board. The Milwaukee Brewers are on the road against the Philadelphia Phillies. Jesus Luzardo is on the bump for the Phils. Chad Patrick is on the bump for the Brewers. The Brewers are anywhere between plus 154 to plus 160 underdogs. Anywhere between minus 175 to minus 185. That number on the Phils. 8 to 8.5 as the total. On the 8, over is minus 115. The under is minus 105. On the 8.5, under is minus 120, and the over is even. I did set my total at an 8.2, so seeing mostly 8.5s out there, I'm going to be willing to take a shot on the under, especially because Jesus Luzardo has been so good. I would rather have that 8.5 under rather than the 8 over, because you've got Luzardo's posting up at 2.15 ERA, fielding dependent more on at 226 with 10.23 strikeouts and 2.6 walks per 9 innings, allowing less than a half home run per 9 innings. 3 runs or fewer allowed in every start this season. And for Chad Patrick, he's been pretty good for the Brewers as well. 2.97 ERA. That includes his long relief appearance against the Yankees. You take that out of the fold, more like a 2.75 ERA as a starter. Not supreme swing and miss stuff. He's only getting about 8 strikeouts per 9 innings, but induces soft contact, giving up less than a home run per 9 innings. 2 earned runs or fewer allowed in 3 out of his last 4 starts. Now he is backed up by a bullpen that last year was really good, and this year has been very shaky for the Milwaukee Brewers. Yo Payamps, Elvis Figueroa, after they were so good last year, well, they've not materialized. They've been on the injured list. They've been down at the minor leagues, so and that's great. And I think that Payamps cleared waivers, so that's not great to say the least. So then you've got a guy, Abner Uribe, who's actually been really good, and they didn't have him last season. Trevor McGill has been able to give you a sub-3 ERA, but a lot of these guys in the bullpen, they just have not been great, to say the least. And for the Milwaukee Brewers, not necessarily a power hitting team, as you do have a double-figure amount of homers out of Christian Yelich, but he's hardly hitting above the Mendoza line of 200. Jackson Trio, 8 home runs, but just a 270 on base. Like what I'm seeing out of Sal Frelick, who's been able to move the line, hitting for about a 360 on base. Bryce Terang, a 340 on base. And the Brewers, they do have 3 separate guys that have been able to give you at least 10 stolen bases. William Contreras has given you a 350 on base. Rhys Hoskins down with his power, only 7 home runs, but about a 385 on base out of him. And for the Philadelphia Phillies, guys not named Kyle Schwarber have had a little bit of a tough time hitting the deep ball. Schwarber going into yesterday, 19 home runs, north of a 390 on base, so he's been able to do a nice job there. Now, Bryce Harper is right now dealing with that elbow injury, did not suit up yesterday against the Brewers, so something that you do want to be noting, and that has been factored into this handicap. Trey Turner, though, he's hitting at 300, and it's just a lot of guys that have like 4, 5 home runs. JT Realmuto, Bryson Stott, like these guys are moving the line other than Realmuto. You've had Alec Bohm at about a 270, Nick Castellanos is sitting at 285, but they're just not necessarily giving you the deep ball. And for the Philadelphia Phillies, it has been a little bit rough in terms of this bullpen, as you've had Matt Strahm along with Ryan Kerkering really be the main anchors, I guess you call it, of this bullpen. Both have been able to give you a sub-4 ERA. You're relying upon Jose Alvarado, who's now suspended, so that's not tremendous to say the least. You've got Jose Ruiz posting up north of 5 ERA. Jordan Romano has been a disaster all season long, but I do think that for Luzardo, goes out there, gives a nice start, and is able to get the job done. For the Philadelphia Phillies, I did set the money line of the Phillies at a minus 167. Now, if you're taking a look at laying a run and a half, right now we have not seen a lot of openers here at FanDuel. I'm right now seeing an additional opener right around about a plus 110. If we could get closer to a plus 116, which I think when it's all said and done, we should be able to. I'm going to be willing to take a shot on that Phillies run line to go along with an 8.5 under. 955, 956 on the betting board. It is the Colorado Rockies who are making the Washington Generals mad about how much they are losing on the road against the New York Mets. Kodai Senga is on the bump for the Mets, and Antonio Senzatella is on the bump for the Rockies. Not that it matters, but in order to, if you want to take the Rockies, it's between plus 320 to a plus 340. I don't think you want to, and anywhere between minus 390 to minus 410 is that number on the New York Mets. Total on this game is 8. The over and the under are both at minus 110, and if you're so bold to take the Colorado Rockies here, like typically I'm a sucker for these numbers. Like if I'm able to get plus 330 on any MLB team prior to this year, I would be signed up for this right away, but I can't touch this with a 500-foot pole. And right now the run line that I'm seeing over at FanDuel to open up minus 1.5 on the Mets is minus 178, and I'm willing to go up to a minus 212. I'm not even kidding. Like, good grief. Antonio Senzatella is right now getting banged around like a piñata. He's giving up 15 hits per 9 innings. Like, this guy should not be gracing at MLB mound right now. He's got a 6.50 ERA, fielding independent, more around a 5.06, 4.8 strikeouts. He's only given up 2.5 walks per 9 innings, but good grief. This guy is just a human white flag. When you throw him out there, you know that your team is lost. And for Kodai Senga, he's been pretty rock solid here for the New York Mets. $1.46 ERA. That should see a little bit of regression, but problem is this Colorado Rockies team can't hit to save their lives. For Senga, he is giving up about 4 walks per 9 innings, so does need to do a little bit of a better job there. And his swing and miss stuff has been down 8.5 strikeouts per 9 innings, but has also given up just 2 home runs in 55 and 2/3 innings. And for the Colorado Rockies, again, this team, they're not really even hitting at home, but I mean, especially on the road, 2.36 runs per game. They're hitting below the Mendoza line of 200 as collective when they're on the road. You've had Hunter Goodman be able to give you 5 home runs on the road, and Jordan Beck as well. So those guys have given you a little bit of something, but I mean, you've got just a plethora of different guys that when they're away from them, they are hitting below a 175 right now. As I mean, all these guys are in that mix. Sean Borchard, throwing their Michael Taglia, Brenton Doyle, Ryan McMahon, Adel Amador. It's just absolutely terrible. And for the Rockies, bullpen has actually not been the world's worst for this team. I'm not saying that they are some sort of just a dominant bullpen or anything like that, but Jake Berg, Zach Ognos, they've been able to give you a sub-2 ERA. Jimmy Erget has been halfway respectable for the team. Seth Elverson, about a 4.60 ERA. Considering half his games are at Coors, that's not necessarily the world's worst number, but that's it for the New York Mets. Just a far more dominant team with regards to their bullpen. You've had Jose Buto start to bite the bullet a little bit, but that said, you've got a lot of guys who have been able to go out there, have been able to give you a sub-3 ERA. You've been able to get that out of Edwin Diaz, obviously the closer, Oscar Zobin, Reed Garrett. These guys have been pretty rock solid out there. Max Kranick has been a relatively good long guy as well. And for the Mets, I recognize that Juan Soto's having a little bit of a less than savory year, but what better way to get online than against this sad and pathetic Colorado Rockies team? Francisco Lindor, Pete Alonso, both have been able to give you 10 plus home runs, with Alonso 390 on base entering into the series. You've had Tyrone Taylor have his ups and downs along with Mark Vientos, Astros. And then Brandon Nimmo, 8 home runs, but only give you about a 290 on base. That said, I do think that the Mets just go out there and utilize the fact that they are the hammer. They take it to the nail, that is the Colorado Rockies, and completely blow them out. I set my total at 8.1. I think that the Mets do a lot of damage on this total. I like the over and the run line of the Metropolitans. 957, 958 on the betting board. The San Francisco Giants are on the road facing off against the Miami Marlins. Edward Cabrera is on the bump for the Fish and Robbie Rays. A zip Ray to another start for San Francisco. San Francisco between minus 160 to minus 170 favorites. Between plus 145 to plus 150 is that number on the Fish. You've got a total of 7.5 to 8 on the 8. Under is minus 120. The over is even on the 7.5. Over and under both at minus 110. And made my total at 8.4. So whether you've got a 7.5 or an 8, I'm going to be looking at the over. And I just need a hair above a plus 150 to take a shot on Miami. Once we get those timelines, should be able to get like a plus 152 or something to be able to fire in here. Now, Edward Cabrera has been lacking command, I think is the best way of being able to put it. As for Edward Cabrera, he's got a home ERA of 5.33, just below 5 overall this season. But that said, he's been giving up right in the neighborhood about 1.2, 1.3 home runs per 9 innings. It's just always the walks. He always gives up north of 4 walks per 9 innings. Has cleaned that up a little bit this year, but that said, it's always a bit of an issue, especially when you've got a Miami Marlins bullpen behind you, because the walks knock you out of starts early. And for the Miami Marlins, currently they are 25th in the big leagues in terms of bullpen ERA at a 4.80. Jesus Sunoco is getting to no good around. Anthony Veziano has been posting up north of a 4.5 ERA. Anthony Bender has actually been very good for the team. Anthony Bender has been able to give you a sub 2.75 ERA, but that said, you've had Calvin Fauché be all sorts of shaky for the team. But for the Miami Marlins, Kyle Sowers is really coming through for the team. 10 home runs, north of a 360 on base. Eric Wagaman is starting to move the line a little bit, hitting for a 255 now. Xavier Edwards landing on the injured list, not so savory there, but that said, you got Connor Norby back, who's been able to about a 275. Matt Mervis and Augustin Ramirez are giving you 7 home runs apiece, but Mervis hitting about a $175, so not necessarily a lot of power bats for the team, and they do face off against the San Francisco Giants team that currently they are number 1 in the big leagues in terms of bullpen ERA. These guys have been absolutely tremendous, as you've got Spencer Bivens, who's been a relatively solid long guy, and then all of these guys have been able to give you a sub 2 ERA. Tristan Beck, albeit it's been a small sample size, Eric Miller, Camilo Udval, Randy Rodriguez, Tyler Rogers. So they have been able to do a nice job of tying it down there. And for Robbie Ray, 2.56 ERA thus far this season, but closer to a 3.20 fielding dependent. He's getting about 10 strikeouts per 9 innings, but the walks are a little bit of a concern. 3.8 walks per 9 innings. And for the Giants, they should do a nice job of being able to find a way to move the line with Eloy Ramos, Wilmer Flores. Both give you 10 home runs apiece. And in the case of Ramos, he's been able to give you about a 350 or so. With regards to that on base, Mikey Strumsky has been able to give you about a 355 or so in terms of his on base. You do need a little bit more towards the bottom of the fold, as you've got the likes of Patrick Bailey, Lamont Wade Jr. hitting below the Mendoza line of a 200. You've got a guy in Luis Matos that whenever they've given him at bats that has not been necessarily savory, as he's hitting like a $150 as well. But for the San Francisco Giants, I do think that Jungle Lee is going to be able to get something going, and at some point Willie Adames is going to hit above a 208. Like, I do think that that's going to turn around a little bit for the Miami Marlins. So I do think that they do a nice job of being able to find a way to be able to draw a few runs off of Robbie Ray. I did set my total at 8.4. I like the over for the Marlins at a plus 152 or higher. Going to be looking at that money line, 959, 960 on the betting board. The Pittsburgh Pirates are on the road facing off against the San Diego Padres. Bailey Falter hopes to not live up to his name for Pittsburgh, and Dylan Cease is on the bump for San Diego. 7.5 is the total, over and under both at minus 110, and we're between minus 210 to minus 218. That number on San Diego, and between plus 180 and plus 190 is that number on Pittsburgh. And with the Padres, I did set them at a minus 232 on the money line. If you're looking to lay a run F with San Diego right now, that initial opener at FanDuel is a minus 110. I would be willing to lay the minus 110. I'd be willing to go up to a minus 117 for Dylan Cease. I believe that he's a much better pitcher than what the raw ERA is indicating, as his strikeout stuff is still very supreme, as he's got a 4.58 ERA, but a fielding dependent more on to 3.25, 11 strikeouts per 9, and he's only giving up about 1 home run per 9. He has given up now 3 earned runs or fewer in each out of his last 5 starts, so he's starting to round into form a little bit more. And I do think that for Bailey Falter, what we have seen out of him thus far this season is a little bit of a flash in the pan. 3.47 ERA, fielding dependent more around to 4.15, only about 6 strikeouts, 3.2 walks per 9 innings. To his credit, he's been able to keep the ball in the yard, but he's given up 4 total runs, 3 of which were earned in his last 5 starts. This is just not sustainable, in my opinion. And even if he does give you a good start, this is a Pittsburgh Pirates team that's averaging about 3.2 runs per game. They're in the bottom 3 in the big leagues in terms of that overall run production, as he just have not been able to get much outside of Oneil Cruz. To the credit the Pirates, last week or so, it's been a little bit better. Cruz, I mentioned before, 12 home runs, about a 350 on base, and then Andrew McCutchen has been able to give you about a 361 on base. But outside of Oneil Cruz, you've got one guy on the roster with north of 3 home runs this season. That'd be Brian Reynolds with 7, and he's hitting at 222. Cabrian Hayes on moving line, hitting at 227 for no power. And then you've got a whole bunch of guys hitting a 210 or lower. Emmanuel Valdez, Tommy Pham, Andy Rodriguez. These guys have just not been great whenever they gave Jack Swaniski an opportunity this year. He was just not coming through. Henry Davis has been hitting about a 222. And for the Pittsburgh Pirates, this is a bullpen that's a little bit shaky to say the least. Colin Holderman, he is on the injured list, and he was not holding you guys down. You've had Isaac Manson give you a few appearances, giving you a 3 ERA. We'll see if we're going to get a little bit more out of him. Dennis Santana, Justin Lawrence have actually been very good for this bullpen. Both of these guys have been able to supply you with a sub-2 ERA, but Justin Lawrence now being on the injured list is not great. So, sad aspect of things. Joey Wentz has been a little bit all over the place. And for the San Diego Padres, this has been a top 12 team with regards to bullpen ERA. Robert Suarez is one of the better closers that you're going to find in all of baseball, sub-3 ERA out of him. And then you've got Adrian Bonajon, Yuki Matsui giving you a sub-3.15 ERA, as long guys Jason Adam has been able to give you a sub-2 ERA. And for the San Diego Padres, guys on named Fernando Tatis Jr. and Gavin Sheets have had a little bit of a tough time hitting the deep ball. As for Sheets, he's been able to supply the team with 11 home runs, hitting at 275, and then Tatis hitting at 275 for 13 home runs himself. But Manny Machado continues at above a 300. Jackson Merrill's hitting above 300, and for Machado up to 6 home runs. He's seen a little bit of a power, shall we say, surge over the last week or so. Jake Cronenworth has come off the injured list. He's been able to give about a 385 on base. So I do think that for the Padres, they do a nice job of being able to get to the Pirates and be able to falter. I just don't think that the Pirates do their part with this total. I think that Cease has himself a nice start, semi-total at 7.3. I like the under and the Padres on the run line. 961, 962 on the betting board. The Washington Nationals at the road they're facing off against the Arizona Diamondbacks. Brandon Pfaadt looks to battle for Arizona, and Mike Soroka is on the bump for Washington. And Washington does find themselves as anywhere between plus 170 to plus 172 underdogs. Minus 187 to minus 205 is that number on the Arizona Diamondbacks. 9 is the total. The over and the under anywhere between minus 105 to a minus 115. And if you're looking to lay a run F with Arizona, you're going to be finding that at a plus 104. I'd be willing to go up to a minus 112. So I'm going to be looking at that Diamondbacks run line. Now for Brandon Pfaadt, has been a little bit of a less than savory season for him thus far, as his swing and miss stuff has been down, but I do think that he's going to be able to regain it a little bit more. Only about 7.1 strikeouts per 9 innings, and that has led to him giving up the deep ball a bit more. 1.7 home runs per 9 innings, 390 ERA, 492 field the opponent, with having given up 3+ runs in 4 out of his last 5 starts. But for Mike Soroka, even though the swing and miss stuff has actually been quite a bit up this season, it's still been a case where he's giving up a lot of hard contact. Only 1.8 walks per 9 innings, that's good, but he's given up 1.8 bombs per 9, 561 ERA, more like a 450 field the opponent, having given up at least 3 runs in 4 out of his last 5 starts. So he's had his issues, and he is backed up by a bullpen of the Washington Nationals that's currently dead stinking last in the National League in terms of ERA, hovering right around about a 6. It's been survival of the fittest in the bullpen, as they had to let go of some of these guys that were really struggling towards the beginning part of the season. Like, you no longer have Lucas Sims out there who's posting up north of a 13 ERA. Colin Boucher got sent down to the minor league, so now they're going to be looking to Andrew Chafin, Cole Henry, Kyle Finnegan. These guys have been able to give you a sub 250 ERA, but Kyle Finnegan has been dealing with a little bit of an injury over the last week or so that's something to keep in mind. Jose Ferreira has been less than tremendous for this bullpen, and for the Washington Nationals, you've been able to get a little bit of production out of the lineup. James Wood has been great. 15 home runs, 385 on base. You've been able to get some good production out of CJ Abrams with about a 280 average, 8 home runs. Now you've got 8 bombs apiece out of Josh Bell and Nathaniel Lowe, and then Dylan Cruz has been able to give you 7 home runs apiece. But in the case of Bell and Cruz, both hitting below the nose line of 200. For Nathaniel Lowe, about a 225 average, so could use a little bit more there. I like Ahmed Rosario has been able to 300 for the team as well. And then for the Arizona Diamondbacks, recognize that the offense isn't as fearsome as it was this season ago, but they're still, if you factor things in from the beginning of the 2024 season, a top 3 offense in terms of run production. Corbin Carroll and Eugenio Suarez, both 15+ home runs apiece. Suarez not necessarily hitting for a lot of average at a 225, but Corbin Carroll, he's been able to about a 260, 330 on base. Josh Naylor is finding a way to move the line, hitting darn near 300. You've had Geraldo Perdomo give you north of a 390 on base, along with Pavin Smith as well. Alec Thomas has been able to give you some good at-bats, and getting back Ketel Marte of the Marte Parte, 8 home runs in about 105 at-bats for north of a 380 on base. I think that that'll be enough for the Diamondbacks to get the job done, even though their bullpen has been a little bit testy themselves. AJ Puck being on the injured list, that's hurt the team quite a bit, but Shelby Miller along Jalen Beeks both give you a sub 335 ERA. Scott McGough coming off the injured list so far has been pretty good, and so has been Kendall Graveman. Justin Martinez has been a little little bit banged up, but they're getting him back in the fold as well. So I did set the Diamondbacks where I'm willing to lay up to a minus 112 on the run line. So looking there, and did set by total 9.2. So you're at the 9. I'd like the over. 963, 964 on the betting board. The Athletics are on the road. They're facing off against the Toronto Blue Jays. We do know that Gunnar Hoglund is going to be on the bump for the Athletics. As of right now, it's a big old to be determined on the bump for the Toronto Blue Jays. So this is a game that's presently off the board. When I was seeing on CBS Sports what they were projecting, they put out their Jose Urena, which means that that's pretty much a bullpen game for the Blue Jays. So I'm operating as such. If you do get the Blue Jays bullpen against the A's, I set the Blue Jays at a minus 108. So willing to go up to a minus 107 on that money line, plus 109 or higher, looking at the Athletics, and then set a total of 9.2. 9 or less, looking at the over, 9.5 or higher, the under. Now for the Blue Jays, prior to their game on Thursday, they had scored 6 runs in their previous 6 games, and then they put 11 runs up on the board on the Athletics in the first 3 innings of this series. So very hilarious there. I do think that for the Blue Jays, you're going to see a little bit of positivity there in terms of their lineup as they do go up against Guy Hoglund, who's been giving up a lot of hard contact. 5.13 ERA, but a 5.39 fielding dependent. 2.1 home runs allowed per 9 innings. He's only getting about 7.5 punch-outs per 9, so he's had his issues there, and for the Blue Jays, they certainly have had their issues as they entered in the series 25th in terms of both home runs on a per at-bat and in terms of just overall run scoring. You've had Vlad Guerrero Jr. If you move line for you, about a 380 on base, but just expect more than 8 home runs out of him. And right now, Dalton Varsho is leading the way with his 8 home runs, and he missed 33 games this season, so that's been a little bit less than tremendous. Now, these guys are still finding a way on, like Alejandro Kirk, don't call his name, he's been able to hit darn near 300 for this team. Miles Straw, Bo Bichette are both hitting about a 275. You've been able to have George Springer give you about a 365 on base, so they're moving line, and for the Blue Jays, this has been a team that's been slightly above average in terms of their bullpen. As Brandon Little will probably see a little bit of action here. He's been able to give you a sub-2 ERA. I know that they've been mixing and matching with Uriel Rodriguez, Eric Lauer as long guys. They've been able to both give you a sub-3 ERA. Now, you've had Jeff Hoffman completely poop the bed, and if you do get a little bit of Jose Urena here, hasn't been terrible. 3.65 ERA. I have my trust issues with Jose Urena, but he's been able to give you a little bit of something. And then on the flip side for the Athletics, this has been a pretty terrible bullpen. They're in the bottom 4 in the big leagues in terms of bullpen ERA. You've been able to get a bit of production out of a guy in Justin Sterner, who's been able to give you a sub-3 ERA. Grant Holman has been able to do a pretty solid job of holding it down as well. But you've got these guys like a TJ McFarland, along with Mason Miller, who I think that Mason Miller has really good stuff, but just has not put it together this year. Both posting up north of 5 ERA. Mitch Spence is more around about a 4.50 ERA. And for the Athletics, it's a solid offense. Not necessarily amazing, but if you compare guys, and Tyler Soderstrom, Brent Rooker providing a combined 22 home runs. Now, Soderstrom has said like 1 home run in the last 25 games, but so he's been able to give you a bit of production there. Shea Langeliers, Shea has banged for about a 310 on base, 9 home runs. Lawrence Butler, not necessarily hitting for a ton of average, but starting to come back to him. He's been able to give you 8 bombs. And Jacob Olsen hitting a 350 with 7 home runs, and all of a sudden has discovered that you can actually draw walks. So that has been helpful. With that said, I do think that the Athletics should be a slight underdog here. Minus 107 or better. Looking at the Jays, plus 109 or better. Looking at the A's, and then 9 or less, I'm in on the over 9.5 or higher. The under 965, 966 on the betting board. It is the Chicago White Sox on the road against the Baltimore Orioles. Dean Kramer is on the bump for Baltimore, and you've got Davis Martin on the bump for the White Sox. White Sox are between plus 160 to plus 171 underdogs, anywhere between minus 183 to minus 192 is that number on Baltimore. 9 is the total. Over is minus 125 to minus 130. Under is between plus 105 to a plus 110. And for Davis Martin and company, I was willing to take a plus 152 or higher on them. I'm going to be in on the White Sox money line. Now, for Davis Martin, is he the Mona Lisa Vito of pitching? No, but Davis Martin has been good enough, I think is the best way of being able to put it, because he's not going to put guys on cheaply. His swing and miss stuff is non-existent. He's getting 5.5 strikeouts per 9 innings, but he's mitigating hard contact, giving up 1 home run per 9 innings, 2.3 walks per 9. He's actually given up a combined 5 runs in his last 3 starts, so he's been pretty solid there. And then for Dean Kramer, this is just a big giant fade of him. Dean Kramer is just not a guy that I want any part of whatsoever. A 5.02 ERA, a fielding dependent more around about a 4.60, 6.5 strikeouts to 2.5 walks per 9 innings, giving up a home run and a half per 9. He has given up 4+ runs in 2 out of his last 3 starts. Now he gets to go up against a Chicago White Sox team that is currently in the bottom 4 in the big leagues in terms of run production away from home, but you've been able to get a little bit more out of Miguel Vargas. He's now given the team 8 home runs, hitting about a 245, so that's been helpful. Chase Meredith has been able to hit about a 285, so he's been moving the line. Lennon Sosa's hitting about a 280. Now, Luis Robert, Andrew Vaughn, 5 home runs apiece, both hitting about a $190, and then you got Andrew Vaughn with a 218 on base. Like, what the heck has happened here? But Edgar Chiaro, the backup catcher, has been able to give you about a 340 on base. So you've got a few guys coming through for you there. Andrew Benintendi, he's back off the injured list, 6 bombs for the team. Now, for the Chicago White Sox, it's been a not so great bullpen for this team, to say the least, as we've actually had Mike Vasilla as a long guy. He's been able to give you a sub-3 ERA, so that's been helpful, and Steven Wilson has been pretty solid as well. But Brandon Eisert, along with the likes of a Jared Schuster, who was the opener yesterday, Cam Boucher, these guys all give you north of a 4.75 ERA. But for the Baltimore Orioles, they're also a bottom 7 team in the big leagues with regards to their bullpen ERA, as well as for Baltimore. Even Felix Bautista is starting to regress a little bit for this team. I will say Brian Baker, along with Keegan Aiken, have both been able to give you a sub-350 ERA, but then you've got Ynier Cano, who's been posting up north of a 4.3 ERA. You've had Sir Anthony Dominguez, Gregory Soto be absolute disasters for the team as well. And it's not like Baltimore is necessarily slugging the cover off the ball, as it is a Baltimore Orioles team that you've got this team in the bottom 10 in terms of overall run production. Ali Rushman just has been able to give you nothing whatsoever. He, Dylan Carlson, Essen Kierstead, only a 220 or lower with not necessarily a lot of power. Gunnar Anderson, move line, he's giving you about a 320 on base, along Jackson Holiday. Holiday's updating about a 270 right now. And Ryan O'Hearn, 8 home runs, 420 on base. He's been rock solid. Cedric Mullins has been able to give you some power, but he's been in and out of the lineup as well. So I do think that this is an interesting scenario here, where I do think that Davis Martin is able to do just enough to be able to get you to victory for the White Sox. I'm willing to take a plus 152 or higher on that money line, and set my total at a 9.1. So at the 9, I'm going to be looking at the over. 967, 968 on the big board. The Kansas City Royals play us to the Detroit Tigers. Says Tariq Skubal is on the bump for Detroit, and Michael Wacha, and if he fails here, he becomes the dying Pac-Man voice of Michael Waka 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 Waka. Goes for the Royals. Royals do find themselves between plus 145 to plus 153 underdogs, minus 165 to minus 175. Then around Detroit, 7.5 is the total, over and under both at minus 110. And for Detroit, I did set them at a minus 148. So being able to get a plus 150 or higher, I'm going to be willing to take a shot on Michael Wacha. Now the pitching matchup obviously goes to Tariq Skubal. Tariq Skubal has been absolutely insane. He is coming off of that start where he had 13 strikeouts in a complete game effort against the Cleveland Guardians. Has been a little bit more shaky on the road, though, and I know that I'm nitpicking a little bit here with Mr. Skubal, but that said, $183 home ERA, 338 ERA on the road, and on the road he has given up more than 1.3 home runs per 9 innings. So you got a little bit of something there. Now you've got a Kansas City Royals team that is at the bottom of the big leagues in terms of run creation at home, averaging about 3.3 runs per game, and for Skubal, 12.1 strikeouts and 0.9 walks per 9 innings, a strikeout to walk ratio of 13.14. So yeah, you're up against it there, but I do think that after such an amazing start last time out, we might see a little bit of regression. And then for Michael Wacha, he's been solid. 321 ERA, 358 fielding independent, not getting a lot of swings and misses, about 6.5 strikeouts per 9, but he's keeping the ball in the yard, giving up less than a home run per 9 innings, and has been able to do a lot of his best work at home thus far this season. As well as for Mr. Michael Wacha, he's posting up a home ERA of a 218 compared to a 440 ERA on the road, giving up just 2 bombs in 33 innings at home. And for this Kansas City Royals team, they've been a top 10 team in terms of bullpen ERA. Lucas Erceg, Carlos Estevez have both been able to give you a sub-3 ERA. You've had Steven Cruz be able to come through for the team, and as we know, this Detroit Tigers bullpen has been one of the best out there in all of baseball. You've got all these guys that are able to mix and match. You're able to give you a sub-3 ERA with the likes of a Tommy Kahnle, John Brebbia, Bryant Herter, who's been able to be utilized as an opener / a starter as well. So these guys have been able to do a tremendous job there, but that's it for the Detroit Tigers. You do have 3 of the guys who have been able to give you 10 plus home runs this season: Kerry Carpenter, Riley Green, Spencer Torkelson. And in the case of Green and Carpenter, both thinking about a 275, Torkelson about a 350 on base, but you've got a lot of guys that are moving the line to make sure that these are not solo shots. Dylan Dingler, Gleyber Torres, Avi Baez, laying at least a 275, Zach McKinstry about a 365 on base as well. So very rock solid lineup there in the top 4 in the American League in terms of runs per game away from them. And for the Royals, it's just all about finding a little bit more power. As Vinny Pasquantino has been able to give you 8 home runs this season, but has been a little bit streaky throughout the season, then you just have nobody else that's really giving you a lot of power, as you've been able to have Bobby Witt Jr. give you 5 home runs, along with Miguel Garcia, and Miguel Garcia is actually hitting above 300. Bobby Witt Jr. has fallen just below 300, so you expect a little bit more out of those guys. And additionally, for the Kansas City Royals, you've had just not a lot of guys be able to step up for you. Michael Massey is hitting below a 215. To the credit of Drew Waters, he's hitting about a 280. It's not for any power whatsoever. Kyle Isbell is hitting about a 270, so guys are starting to move the line a little bit more, but Salvador Perez hitting a 222 has been relatively rough. That said, I do think that they're going to be able to generate just a little bit more here for Tariq Skubal. I think he gives up a few runs. I do think that this is going to be a very, very low-scoring game. I think the Royals have a chance with that bullpen to pull out an incredibly low-scoring game. So I did set my total at 7.3. I'm in on the under. And at a plus 150 or higher, give me a shot on the Royals on the money line. 969, 970 on the betting board. The LA Angels hit the road. They're facing off against the Cleveland Guardians. Slade Sassoni is on the bum for Cleveland, and the professor, Kyle Hendricks, goes for the Angels. Angels are between plus 150 to plus 162 dogs, minus 170 to minus 180. That number on the Guardians, 8.5 is the total. Under is minus 125. Over is plus 105, and seeing 8 out of there as well. On the 8, under is minus 105, and the over is minus 115. And I did set the Angels at a plus 152. Kyle Hendricks, not necessarily the guy that you want to be putting all your shekels in the middle with, but you know what? Getting this big of a plus number, I'm going to be willing to take a shot on the money line for the professor. He has been getting banged around like a piñata thus far this season. A 5.25 ERA, 5.10 fielding dependent, and the 2.7 walks per 9 innings. That is a little bit of an issue. He's rounded into a little bit of better form though. It's not amazing, but 3 runs or fewer allowed in 4 out of his last 5 starts. He's been cutting down on the walks a little bit, and for Kyle Hendricks, what you do fear is that he's given up 6 home runs to 29 and 2/3 innings away from home, 6.37 ERA, but I still am not bought in on Slade Sassoni. With Slade Sassoni, he's giving you a 3.27 ERA, but it's a small sample size. Last year he had a 6.66 ERA with the Arizona Diamondbacks, where he was giving up 2 home runs per 9 innings, and he's still giving up 1.6 home runs per 9 innings thus far this season. Swing and miss stuff his way up, 11.5 punch-outs per 9 innings, but first 2 seasons in the big league level, he was only getting about 7 to 7.5 strikeouts per 9 innings, and this is not a Cleveland Guardians bullpen that is as reliable as it was last season. Last season, these guys were absolute nails, and now Emmanuel Clase has been a little bit better here recently, but he's still rocking an ERA that's right around about a 4. You do have Hunter Gaddis back off the bereavement list. He, Cade Smith, have both been able to give you a sub-3 ERA, but Joey Cantillo's been posting up an ERA that's just below a 4. You've had your issues with Jacob Junis this season, and for the Cleveland Guardians, it's a very top-heavy lineup. Like, at the top, you've got Steven Kwan, who's doing a nice job moving the line, hitting above 800, and then Jose Ramirez hitting for a 318. Power numbers are a little bit down, but still giving you 9 home runs this season. And then Kyle Manzardo is up to 10 bombs thus far this season, but he's only hitting about a 210. You've had the bottom of the lineup just have a bunch of guys hitting below a 200, though. Bo Naylor, Nolan Jones, Brian Rocchio, John Kenzie Noel, Lane Thomas, Austin Edges. That's been all sorts of rough. It's so bad that they're probably going to be sending Rocchio, if they haven't already, down to the minor league level. So that's not necessarily so amazing. And then on the flip side, you do have yourself an Angels team that they have for a lot of power. This is actually a Los Angeles Angels team that does rank in the top 6 in the big leagues in terms of home runs on a per at-bat basis. You're getting Mike Trout off the injured list. Now, Trout is not hit for any sort of average whatsoever, but he had 9 home runs in his first 106 at-bats. And then you got 9 bombs out of Zach Neto, who's been able to hit about a 280. Taylor Ward, Logan O'Hoppe, a combined 29 home runs between these 2 guys. Now, Ward is giving you a 265 on base, but Logan O'Hoppe is hitting about a 260. Nolan Schunel's been able to give you about a 370 on base. Kyron Paris, along Joe Adell, they're setting fire to the rain, both hitting below the Bedell's 200, 6 home runs apiece, and this is an LA Angels bullpen that is currently dead last in the big leagues in terms of ERA. They're sending out there now Hunter Strickland and Robert Stevenson to try to hold down the fort as the lone guy that has seen north of 6 innings thus far this season that has an ERA below a 490 is Ryan Zephyrian, so that's not great. Brock and Roll Burke has been less than tremendous. Garrett McDaniels wasn't good to start with. He's now on the injured list. Reed Detmers is a complete disaster, but that said, I do think that this number has gone up a little bit too high. I'm going to be willing to take a shot on Hendricks and take a shot on that money line. I did set my total at 8.8 here at the 8.5. I do like the over. 971, 972 on the card. We got the Tampa Bay Rays on the road against the Houston Astros as Colton Gordon is going to be going for the Astros, and Zach Little hopes to come up big for the Rays, and the Rays do find themselves as a very slight underdog as they're hovering in the neighborhood of plus even money, plus $1 to plus 106 on the Tampa Bay Rays. Meanwhile, minus 115 to minus 120. That number on Houston, 8.5 is the total. Under is minus 115. The over is minus 105, and for Houston, I'm going to be willing to lay this number. I did set them at a minus 134. I just don't have a lot of faith in Zach Little in general, and I recognize that Colton Gordon is not necessarily the world's greatest pitcher in the world. He is a rookie that's been called upon, and he's been trying to do his best to be able to hold down the fort. 3 starts, 5.52 ERA. He has allowed in these starts 2 home runs in 14 and 2/3 innings, 8.5 strikeouts per 9 innings. And if you looked at the minor league level, it's not like he completely lit ablaze everything with the Sugarlands-based Cowboys, as it was a relatively small sample size of 8 starts. Previous season was posting up about a 4 ERA, but in the PCL, last 2 seasons, a sub-4 ERA is actually really good. So there's that, and you've got a guy in Mr. Little is posting up a 3.97 ERA. ERA, but a 5.12 fielding dependent. Only about 6 strikeouts per 9 innings, to his credit, only about 1.4 walks per 9 innings, but he's been giving up 2 home runs per 9 as well. He's posted up starts where he's given up 2 earned runs for fewer than 4 of his last 5. I think that's going to be a little bit of a flash in the pan, as you've got a Houston Astros bunch and is still missing Yordan Alvarez, but without Alvarez, they've actually been able to find quite a bit of offense. They've had quite a bit out of Isaac Paredes, who's been able to give you north of a 360 on base. He's right now supplying 11 home runs. Jose Altuve, after a rough start to the season, he's rounding into form, hitting at 270 again with 9 home runs. Christian Walker has been pretty useless for the team, as he and Yenier Diaz both posting up a on-base percentage below a 290, but after a rough start to the season, Cam Smith is I'll give you about a 340 on base. Jake Myers has moved the line as well. For the Tampa Bay Rays, they're starting to get a little bit of power out of this team, as you've got a pair of guys in Junior Caminero along with Brandon Lau who will be able to give you a double-figure amount of homers. Now, Lau is dealing with a little bit of ailment, was out of the lineup yesterday, but all of a sudden, Jake Magnum, who was so good to start the season, hitting at 338, he's off the injury list for the first time in a month. Now, you've still got some disasters on this team. Taylor Walls, Danny Jansen, Ben Rovick, Christopher Morel, all these guys are hitting at 210 or lower, and Yandy Diaz is only giving you about like a 280 on base. He's been able to give you 7 home runs, but both of these team strengths are very much in the bullpen for the Tampa Bay Rays. So many guys here you're able to mix and match with. Recognize Mason Montgomery's had a little bit of a rough season, but Manuel Rodriguez, Garrett Clevenger, Hunter Biggie, Pete Fairbanks, all these guys give you a sub 3.5 ERA. Has been pretty rock solid. And for the Houston Astros, you did see Brian King give up a few runs in the previous outing that he had, but he's still below a 3.40 ERA. Brian Abreu, Josh Hader, Caleb Ort, these are guys that are right now give you a sub 3 ERA, and Steven Okert has been pretty rock solid in that bullpen as well. I do think that for the Houston Astros, they're going to be able to get just enough out of Colton Gordon to be able to get the job done here, and I do think that they get to little. So I did set my total at 8.7. I like the over, and I do like the Houston Astros on the money line, 973, 974 on the betting board. The Minnesota Twins that they're facing off against the Seattle Mariners, as Bryce Miller goes for Seattle, and Bailey Ober is on the bump for Minnesota. Minnesota is a very slight underdog, so I should pick them. You're going to be finding both teams anywhere between a -104 to a -110. Total on this game is 7. The over is -120, and the under is even. I set the Mariners at a -137. I'm going to be willing to take a shot on the money line. I recognize that for Mr. Bryce Miller, it's been a less than savory start to the season from 5.22 ERA. This is going to be his first start in 20 days, as he last appeared on May 11th. But that said, he's always pitched his best at home. 292 home ERA with a little bit over 0.8 home runs per 9 innings. 466 road ERA with 1.3 home runs per 9 innings. And Bailey Ober's had his struggles on the road. His ERA is a 4.67 on the road, with his strikeouts per 9 rate going from 8.1 at home to more like 6 when he's away from home. And for Minnesota Twins, this is a lineup that is averaging about 3.5 runs per game away from home. Now, Byron Buxton is coming off of the concussion 7-day IL, so that helps his team out a little bit, but you could still use a little bit more just offensive firepower in general, as you've had Ty France be able to about a 250 for this team. Trevor Larnach is starting to move the line a little bit more for these guys as well, but that said, Rice Lewis is coming off the injury list, just has not been himself. Hitting well below 200, you're still without Matt Wallner. Harrison Bader has been able to give you about a 360 on base, and Ryan Jeffers up to about a 350 on base as well, but not a lot of power outside of Byron Buxton along with Larnach, who's been able to give you 7 home runs. And for the Seattle Mariners, all of a sudden this has been a top 10 team with regards to a run production, as you've been able to get a lot of production out of big dumper Cal Raleigh. How about a 380 on base with 19 home runs entering in the day on Friday? Julio Rodriguez, Ore Polanco, both up to a double-figure amount of homers. Polanco is starting to regress a little bit, but as he's regressing, Julio Rodriguez is starting to pick it up. You've had J.P. Crawford give you about a 370 on base. Roddy Tella is not hitting for any sort of average whatsoever, but he and Dylan Moore, 8 home runs apiece. And you've had Ben Williamson actually hit above a 250 for the team as well. And for the Seattle Mariners, this is a top 8 team with regards to their bullpen ERA, as Andres Munoz has been one of the most dominant closers out there in all baseball. But how about Matt Brash? The fact that he has yet to give up a earned run since coming off of the injured list. You've had quite a bit of production out of Casey Lugamina, Gabe Spire. These guys give you a sub 250 ERA. Carlos Vargas has been able to mix and match for the team as well. And for the Minnesota Twins, this is a top 5 team with regards to their own bullpen ERA, as Yohan Adon has been one of the better closers in all baseball. He's supplying a sub 2 ERA. Danny Klum has yet to give up an earned run this far this season as well. So, and he has been remarkable. But Justin Topa, Cole Sands, they've been able to give you a sub 3 ERA along with Louis Varland. So I do think that the bullpen pitching is going to be rock solid, but I do think that for the Mariners, Bryce Miller gives up a few runs, and Bailey Ober, he's been shaky away from home. So I did set my total at 7.6. I do do like the over, and I do like the Seattle Mariners on the money line. 975, 976 on the card. The Walker Texas Rangers playoffs. The St. Louis Cardinals. Sonny Gray is on the bump for the Cards, and Patrick Corbin, the turkey tosser, goes for Texas. Total on scheme is 8. Unders minus 115. The overs minus 105. Minus 138 to minus 148. That number on St. Louis anywhere between plus 124 to a plus 126. That number on Texas, and I set my money line price at a minus 137. Seeing that minus 136 is my max buy point on St. Louis, but I'm going to be willing to lay it. As for St. Louis, you've got a guy in Sonny Gray. He's been a little bit shaky this year. 6.75 ERA on the road. He's allowed 5 home runs at 14 and 2/3 innings away from home. Now he goes up against a Texas Rangers team that I believe that they played 6 out of their first 30 home games to the over. Just 6 overs, 24 unders to start out the season, as they have not been able to get a lot going on offense. Wyatt Langford has been able to give you 10 home runs this season. He's giving you about a 320 on base, but Adolis Garcia, Jock Peterson, Jake Berger, Marcus Semien, all these guys hitting a 215 or lower. All these guys not moving the line. It's been rough for them. You've got Josh Young, give you about a 275 average, 7 home runs. That's been rock solid. And Berger, to his credit, has been able to give you 7 home runs. Corey Seager being on the injured list has been hurting this team, but looks like he's coming off the injured list. That helps out this team just a skosh. Sam Haggerty is giving you nothing whatsoever, though. And then for the St. Louis Cardinals, not necessarily the biggest Powerball team, as you've got Mr. Lars Nootbaar, who's been able to give you 8 home runs, but a lot of guys are doing a nice job of just being able to find a way to move the line, get on base. Mason Wynn north of a 350 on base. Nootbaar 355 on base. Brendan Donovan is hitting at 335. Nolan Arenado, not necessarily himself, and Wilson Contreras has been a little bit hit or miss, both of these guys, between about a 310 to a 315 on base, 6 home runs apiece. But getting back Ivan Herrera, 5 bombs in his first 81 at bats, hitting above a 300. That should be able to help out. And Yoel Pozo, who's been a little bit of a backup catcher for the team, has been hitting above a 300 as well for the St. Louis Cardinals. After a rough start to the season, the bullpen is really rounding into form, as well as you've got a pair of guys in Kyle Leahy along with Phil Matone, give you a sub 275 ERA. Jojo Romero, after he was rough, he and Ryan Helsley back down to a sub 350 ERA. And John King is starting to hold it down a little bit as well for the Texas Rangers. A slightly below average bullpen, in my opinion. If you take a look at what they've been able to get out of some of these unexpected guys like Robert Garcia, it's been rock solid, as Garcia, Hobie Milner, these two guys have been able to give you a sub 275 ERA. And Sean Armstrong, he's been able to give you a bit of something, sub 4 ERA, but you do have quite a few guys that have been regressing. Luke Jackson, Jacob Webb, both of these guys, both up north of a 4.6 ERA, has been a little bit rough for them, and I do think that the Cardinals find a way to be able to get to a guy in Patrick Corbin that has been respectable if you look at the raw numbers thus far this season. A 3.75 ERA, but still 7 strikeouts at 3 walks per 9 innings. He has been posting up that ERA, but a 4.99 fielding independent, 1.7 home runs allowed per 9 innings. I think that regression comes here. I like the over. I set my total at an 8.4, and want to go up to a minus 136 on the Cardinals money line. 977, 978 on the betting board. The Boston Red Sox hit the road. They're facing off against the Atlanta Braves. Spencer Schwellenbach is on the bump for the Braves. Walker Buehler is on the bump for Boston. 9 is the total. Under minus 120. The over is even with Atlanta. And between minus 160 to minus 166 is that number, and plus 140 to plus 148 is that number on Boston. And at a plus 148, that becomes my buy point on the Red Sox. I did set them approximately at a plus 148 for Walker Buehler. Has had a few rough starts to begin the season. He's spent a bit of time on the injury list, but I do think that he's going to be able to round into form. 3.95 ERA, 4.47 fielding independent. Strikeout numbers are a little bit down with about 8 strikeouts per 9 innings, but has now given up 300 runs or fewer in each out of his last 5 starts, and in his 2 starts since coming off the injury list, a combined 2 runs allowed. Now, one of those he went to in the 3rd innings against the Mets and I believe that was a game in which there was a rain delay, if I'm not mistaken, but he's been able to give you a little bit of production since coming off the injury list. And then for Schwellenbach, he's not necessarily getting the same amount of strikeouts that he did a season ago, but he's been solid in terms of inducing soft contact. 8 strikeouts, 1.2 home runs per 9 innings, 3.42 ERA, 3.65 fielding independent ever since that white hot start to the season. Has regressed a little bit, but still he's been able to do a nice job holding it down. He has given up at least 4 runs in 3 out of his last 5 starts, but he does go up against the Boston Red Sox team that, without Alex Bregman, it's been pretty miserable for them recently, as you still do have a pair of guys that are able to give you double-figure amount of homers in Weiler Abreu, coupled with Rafael Devers. Rafael Devers will not pick up a glove, but he's picked it up with bat, north of a 400 on base. You've got a guy in Abreu who's been able to give you about a 335 on base. Christian Campbell is really regressing out there in the field at the plate. He's hitting at 225. That's not great, but Jaron Duran is out hitting at 280. Travis Story, as useful as a poopy-flavored lollipop, 263 on base. He's giving you nothing whatsoever, but on the flip side, you do have an Atlanta Braves team that is a little bit hit or miss with regards to their lineup. Getting back around Acuna Jr. is massive. He had 2 home runs in his first 2 games back. He's been able to do a nice job getting on base. Austin Riley's base up to 9 bombs. He's been able to hit about a 280. And then Marcell Ozuna hitting for about a 280, but a 428 on base, 9 home runs out of him. Matt Olson not hitting for a lot of average, but 12 home runs, still give you about a 340 on base. And this is an Atlanta Braves bullpen that they're good, but not great. You've been able to find quite a bit of production out of some of these, shall we say, unheralded guys, as you've had Desbel Hernandez, Dylan Lee, both give you a sub 275 ERA, along with Pierce Johnson, approximately a 275 there, but it's been a case where just have not been able to get a lot of Rafael Montero, who's been Rafael Montero Bowl, and then additionally, it's been a very bad season for Rossiel Iglesias. Meanwhile, for the Boston Red Sox, Aroldis Chapman overall has been pretty solid this year, but you just never know when he's going to poop the bed. Liam Hendricks, great story, but the fact that he has a north of 6 ERA is not necessarily so savory for the team. Luis Guerrero, in a small sample size, has been solid. He and Brendan Bernardino both give you a sub 2 ERA, but you always have to have your question marks with the likes of Justin Slayton. Garrett Woodlock has not necessarily been tremendous as well, but that said, I do think that plus 148 has gone a little bit too far. I'm going to be willing to take a shot on that money line. I made my total in 8.8 at the 9. I like the under, and we wrap things up with 979, 980 on the betting board. The New York Yankees are on the road against the LA Dodgers. Landon Knack is on the bump for the Dodgers, and Will Warren goes for the Yankees. 9.5 is the total. Under is minus 115. The over is minus 105. For the Dodgers, they're between minus 116 to minus 130 favorites. Between plus 105 to plus 110 is that number on the Yankees. But you get down to a minus 124 on the Dodgers, which we're finding that in quite a few spots. I'm going to be willing to take a shot on that money line. For Will Warren, he's actually been a whole heck of a lot better for the New York Yankees here in the last few starts, as his strikeout stuff is actually very good. He's been able to give you 10 strikeouts per 9 innings, but the walks issues have been there. He sometimes gives up a little bit too much hard contact in general, so I've been a little bit tepid on him here this season, but I'm starting to gain a little bit more confidence in him. As for Mr. Warren, his ERA is currently a 4.09, but that fielding dependent is actually a 2.70, so a little bit of credit where it is due, and he's given up 2 earned runs or fewer in each out of his last 4 starts. Flip side, you look at a guy in Mr. Landon Knack, and he has been getting knocked around a little bit. The strikeout stuff ever since he got called up to the big league level has not necessarily been terrible, as he's been giving you darn near 9 strikeouts per 9 innings, but the 1.8 home runs per 9 innings, an issue, 5.22 ERA, more like a 4.95. Fielding dependent, he's given up 4+ runs in 2 out of his last 3 starts. Now he does have to go up against a New York Yankees team that is currently leading the American League in terms of run production. Obviously, Aaron Judge has been incredible. 18+ home runs, growth of a 480 on base this far this season, but I mean, it's not just him. You've had Trent Grisham be able to give you 10+ home runs. Ben Rice has been able to give you 10+ home runs after a rough start to the season. Cody Bellinger has been able to do a very rock solid job for his team, and you've noticed a few guys in general just starting to round him for him. Bellinger, after his rough start to the season, that was really the biggest of them, but here in the month of May, you've got Paul Goldschmidt, who's been able to give you 4 on base, still not give you a ton of power, but he's been able to do a solid job there, and then you got San Dominguez, north of a 360 on base in the month of May with 4 home runs, so you do like to see that. Meanwhile, for the LA Dodgers, you've got that guy by the name of Shohei Ohtani. He's one of the best players on the face of planet Earth, currently being able to supply this team with 20 home runs and nearly a 400 on base. Mookie Betts has been a little bit down for his standards, 340 on base with 8 home runs this far this season, but you've got Freddie Freeman, Andy Paz, give you 9 home runs apiece, and in the case of Freeman, a 425 on base. You've got Teoscar Hernandez, not necessarily give you a lot of on base, but 10 bombs, hitting at 300. You've had Will Smith get you with a north of 450 on base, and both of these seem to have their warts in their bullpen. Now for the New York Yankees, Ian Hamilton, along with Devin Williams, have been rough, but you've got one of the better relievers that you're going to find in Luke Weaver, and they've done a nice job of mixing and matching with Yuri De Los Santos, give you a sub 3 ERA. Fernando Cruz being on the injured list is rough, but getting back Jonathan Loaizaga has been very good, and for the Dodgers, they've got Kirby Yates currently on the injured list, and Tanner Scott has been a disaster for the team, north of a 4 ERA. Anthony Banda right around about a 4 himself, but Ben Casparas, Jack Dreyer, these are 2 long guys who have been able to give you a sub 325 ERA. You've been able to get into the fold. Lou Trevino has been able to give you a few good innings as well, and I do think that for Landon Knack, he does a nice job holding down the fort in a game where I do think that runs are going to be plentiful. I set my total at 9.6. I like the over, and for the Dodgers, want to go up to a minus 123 on that money line, and that'll wrap things up for the Saturday edition of the Baseball Betting Show, now part of the VSiN family of podcasts. If you do like hearing from this fine podcast, Baseball Betting Show, you're able to subscribe wherever your podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, and TuneIn. If you have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you do have one of 2 ways to be able to fire those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at gunit_81. Keep in mind, letter C, I'm the me, does not matter, so per usual, please do send these into the timeline. Otherwise, find an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated. From there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review, and I'm coming at you guys every single day throughout the baseball season. Big thanks once again to Curtis Rogers for joining me in the last segment, and I'll be back with you guys once again tomorrow. Thank you.
If your job at a healthcare facility includes disinfecting against viruses, you know prevention is the best medicine. And maintaining healthy spaces starts with a healthy cleaning routine. Grainger's world-class supply chain helps ensure you have the quality products you need when you need them. From disinfectants and cleaning supplies to personal protective equipment, so you can help deliver a clean bill of health. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.